Welcome back to Moving Abroad 222 podcast. I'm your host, Alewa Shun, and we are back with another banger, another amazing episode. As always, before we start, please make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please make sure you like, share, and leave your takeaways of any interest that you have about this particular episode. Today, we have a special guest, and I would allow him to introduce himself.
Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Franck. I'm from Virginia, and I've been a digital nomad for about 7 years. I think I've been to about 48 countries right now. So I have a bit of, I'll say, insight on just traveling as a whole.
Definitely be good insight. Very experienced, very experienced.
Somewhat. I don't like to consider myself an expert, but I think in terms of travel, I have some experience.
Yeah, I love that. Very humble. Okay, let's jump right in. So, when did your journey start with traveling? What was the first location that you went to, and how old were you?
Yeah, so I've been kind of fortunate because my parents were in the U.S. military, and as you know, there's U.S. bases all over the world. So when I was 7, we were stationed in Germany, near Frankfurt. So I kind of grew up abroad in a way. The only kind of issue is that we were on a military base, so my entire interactions, my friends, was kind of like in this like U.S. culture. So I didn't really get to benefit as much. But then later on, when I was 15, we were stationed back again in Germany, and so I was older now, so I got to kind of leave the base and with friends and kind of like experience the culture. So that was kind of like my first really experience with being abroad and seeing like the stark differences between like US culture and like European culture.
Wow, that's so cool. So, what is
Yeah.
that like having parents that travel for a living and having a passport at such a young age? What does that feel like? Do you have memories of like experiencing that? Like, what was that like for you as a child?
Yeah, it was kind of strange because like even though we were on like a US base abroad, we had like mostly US culture. And then when you kind of stepped out, it was just completely different, right? So like a lot of times on base, even with like our school lunches, we had like kind of US food, Pop Tarts and like, all these kind of snacks we're used to. And then you go abroad and it's like one clear example, for example, is like on the US base, we couldn't drink at 16. So a lot of my friends were 15, 16 in high school. We couldn't drink. But as soon as we stepped out, the drinking age there was a lot lower, so we could drink. So like, and of course, there's nothing they can kind of do about it. So it was a kind of weird experience, in some sense, where you're just kind of seeing the differences between these two cultures, and then you also kind of get to, I'll say, benefit from it. When you're meeting other people your age, a lot of times, I played soccer and I wrestled. We would have like some soccer games with like the local kids, and it was kind of interesting to see like how interested they were in our culture and we were so interested in their culture,
Mm.
right? So you had like this kind of mutual interest, and of course everyone kind of asked like the questions like, oh, is it true you can get shot here in the US? And like, so it was kind of interesting to like see like some of their stereotypes about US culture, and like us trying to kind of get their stereotypes as well, like, oh, so you guys, free school's just free forever, like how many degrees can you get? So that was kind of fun, but yeah, it was a really, I'll say, good experience. I'm very fortunate for that because when moving back to the US for I went to school in Virginia for university, and like it's just such a kind of big difference when you kind of like you feel like you don't really belong in any particular kind of culture because you've been exposed to many. So I think sometimes like the notion is like you feel like you're adapting both and you feel at home at both. But sometimes when you're in that, it's like, oh, okay. I know I'm like, yeah, I'm American, but it's like I've spent so much of my time, in another country, and when you kind of see the downside, right? So it's like, we're going to school paying 30K plus a year, and then you're like, wow. The friends I had back in Germany, the Germans, they didn't really have to worry about that. And I actually had some friends in high school who actually stayed, right, and just like didn't really pay much for school, for university there, and just kind of stayed in that culture. So yeah, it was really kind of interesting to just see like um because a lot of people have sort of like a notion or idea of another culture. So a lot of people, when I was in the US, like, oh yeah, you were in Germany. Like, what was that like? Are they um, you know, given back what happened with the world wars in Germany, people had these ideas like, oh, maybe like it's bad there and it's horrible, and um, a lot of people for some reason think they don't have freedom in other countries.
Mhm.
So it's kind of interesting to see, like, I always wonder, I'm like, if I just grew up completely in the US, would I have these ideas as well, these kind of like falsehoods about other cultures without, really meeting those people? Yeah,
Mhm.
so it was really interesting.
Okay, I love that. Lots of experience. And I think that that's a huge privilege
Yeah.
to be able to have that experience. But I feel like it also helped you find out who you really are and what you want at a very young age. You were able to
Yeah.
see this is where I'm from. This is, obviously I'm American, right? But then we travel and I'm having these experiences so I can
Hmm.
decide on what world I would like to be a part of. And then you have
Yeah.
the option of going back and forth or choosing one or the other. And then it gives you lots of experience too, so you can understand other people's way of thinking and why they choose what they choose, right? Because a lot
Hmm.
of people, they don't have that experience as children or as teenagers to explore and travel. All they know is America. So,
Yeah.
we see them and we see how they move. And a lot of people judge people because they've never traveled and they're like, something's wrong with you. But think about it.
Hmm.
They have never been exposed to any of the things that you were privileged to see. So they don't know. So their mind can't fathom how to create the type of life that you live where to even start it, right? Even if they were
Yeah.
interested, they don't even know where to start because they've never even been exposed to step foot outside of America. So I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so how much time did you actually spend in America when you were young? Like, how much time did you actually get there?
I would say I spent maybe 10 plus years. So we were mainly in like Virginia. We spent a little bit of time in Atlanta, Georgia. So
Mm-hmm.
even, of course, even in the US, like you have these like big cultural differences. I
Mm-hmm.
come from like immigrant family, right? So my family's from Cameroon. So I had like this,
Oh,
I would
okay.
say, um, kind of same thing where like I'm coming from a different culture in a sense, and I'm in the US, right? So it's like my home life is very kind of African parenting. And then I get exposed. Like, for example, the first time I heard one of my friends, I must have been like 8 or 9, tell their parents to shut up. And like I was just mind blown. I was like, you do not do that in an African household. Like that's your funeral. Like you're just like,
Yeah, definitely.
thing you just do not do. So it was interesting to kind of see like the different cultures within like even the US, and then mix that with like, being in Germany. But yeah, so and then even like Atlanta, Georgia versus like Northern Virginia, where I grew up, most of the time, like even there was a bit of cultural differences as well.
Yeah,
Like it's
different.
like South versus a bit kind of north there, Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's kind of like not really feeling like you belong any particular place, which makes it very
Mhm.
hard to really ever be like in one.
One thing, yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. So, were you born in America or were you born in Africa and your parents was born there and then you were born in America?
Yeah, so I was born in Cameroon, and I left at like 6 or 7, like really young,
Okay.
and then just went to the States, and then kind of Germany. Yeah, so it was because that age is it's a very sensitive age,
Very
right? So when
important
you
age. It is.
it kind of affects like the whole trajectory of your life. Yeah.
Yeah. And I always tell people from the last trimester, right? Up into here I am with the neuroscience, I have to. From the last trimester to age 7, we are nothing but a sponge. So
Yeah.
our energy is only receptive. We're only taking in, right? So that whole time period, all you did is take in, take in, take in, and it played a big role in who you are today. And I always tell people that, and it's so interesting. That's why I'm interested in, just asking you about your childhood and your upbringing to get to where you are now, because it played a big role, right? In getting you to where you are and why you're so free to get up and say, hey, I'm going to move to another country and live here, because that's something that a lot of people would never do. Okay.
Yeah.
So, at what age did you realize you wanted to travel and live abroad? When did that start?
I would say I had this notion, being in high school in the States, and then you're kind of just going with the flow. This is what you do. You finish school, go to university, graduate. So I just kind of followed that path, and then I would say maybe 3 years out of graduating from college, and just like throughout that time, a lot of times when people would have like their vacations, they want to go to Miami or travel within the US, and I did some of that, but like I always wanted to go abroad. So any chance I got, I flew to Europe, flew to Thailand, Vietnam, and I was like, I just know there's so much more than just going to Miami for a weekend or something, right? Um, so throughout, I would say a year out when into like my kind of first full-time role, every time I would have vacation days, which in the US is not it's not as much.
Right. Right.
Um, so I would have like kind of like a side hustle with some friends where we would build like apps and website for people and to kind of supplement my income because what I would do is like I had a really good kind of manager. I would take unpaid leave on top of like my kind of like paid vacation because I was like, okay, this is just I can't do 2 weeks out of the year. This is just not sustainable mentally for me after
Right.
having that exposure. So then I would end up taking probably like an extra month on top of that, and I would kind of the side hustle I would have would kind of supplement that income. And then I would go to whether it's Thailand for 2 weeks or go to Europe for 2 weeks or so. And yeah, after doing that a few times, and like every time I would come back to the US, and just like getting back in the grind, 9 to 5, getting up at, which is really, I don't know, it's really like 9 to 6 or so because commuting to work, being at
Exactly.
work, coming back,
Yeah.
and then you're just exhausted, all the things you want to do. You're like, "Ugh, I'll do it tomorrow." And then just seeing the drain that took, and I was like, how do I just, not do this? How do I kind of um, go abroad kind of full time. So eventually, I just decided to just kind of take a leap because I was thinking to myself, uh, youth doesn't really come back. It's like the youngest you'll ever be, and it's like, what kind of regret would I have? Like, one, you can kind of be very established, your stable career, and just kind of hope that you have the courage to kind of switch later in life
Mhm.
and decide to do all these things, or you kind of take the leap and kind of trust that you'll kind of figure it out. So yeah, so that's kind of where I kind of went, and then at the time it was around 2018, end of 2018, when I really kind of made that first leap. And their remote work wasn't what it is now, right? We didn't. It was
Mhm.
pre-pandemic, so it was kind of a bit different. And the economy is, I would say, a bit better. Um, so yeah, it wasn't completely bad. But yeah, after that, I was like, I need to figure out how to you know how to live abroad, and that was like my kind of soul mission.
Mm. You need to live abroad. That need, I know that urge after being exposed to something so different and then coming back and getting into this system. Because that's all
Yeah,
America is. It's a
yeah,
system.
yeah,
It
yeah.
just it's a business, right? At the end of the day, it's just about making the rich richer and making people performative at all times. Perform, 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 no breaks,
Hmm.
nothing else. So you've been to a lot of countries. So let's
Yeah.
unpack that. Can you name some of the countries that you've been to?
So I would say I've been to most of Europe outside of like not too far east, so like not like Ukraine, kind of Russia, but like kind of before that.
Mhm.
And except for I would say the main European country I haven't been to is like I would say Monaco, Switzerland, and like Luxembourg, like these kind of very small places, but like most
Mhm.
of Germany, France, Spain, Portugal, like most of the ones you would heard of, I kind of been there in terms of Europe. In Asia, the list is smaller. So Asia is like Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia. So those like when you're kind of backpacking, those are like the main ones. I think the
Mhm.
only one on that list I haven't been to that's very common in Southeast Asia is like the Philippines.
Mhm.
And then in terms of like the US, of course, Canada, Mexico, and then you have where else did I? Aruba. I went to Aruba. That was interesting. Um,
Aruba
yeah, and
is
then Cuba.
different.
Yeah,
Cuba.
yeah, it was definitely because I kind of went there, but it was like a very everyone was like on their honeymoon and I was just there traveling, so that was kind of yeah, kind of strange. Cuba,
Interesting.
which is very interesting place. Yeah, Turkey, which is kind of Europe, kind of not Europe. Of course, I did like the Dubai. So it's like a mix of like the things you should do. That was like I would say something that I learned throughout that journey is once you know yourself and like your style, you start to avoid what most people are supposed to do, right? So like
I
everyone,
love
oh
that.
Dubai, do this, and you know, it's like there's a point where it's like I just know, you know, I'm not someone I don't party much, right? So going
Mhm.
to Miami and partying is just not that rewarding, right? It's like for me, it's like it has to be very meaningful. Someone's wedding, someone's birthday, like it's
Right.
like being with friends, like the environment. That's what kind of motivates me. But just to go and go to a party destination that doesn't really like kind of move me. So and that's one of the reasons I think when I first kind of started, I had this idea of like, I need to go to as many countries as I can. And
Mhm.
I remember um, I would purposely find the longest layover places. Like I remember I was going to, I think maybe Germany, and there was a layover in Copenhagen for like 18 hours, right? Of course, those are the cheapest flights. So I would do that and just kind of leave the airport and I had a lot more energy back then, but like but then I found like that's kind of exhausting to just bounce around. And now my approach is really to like just be somewhere. I find that it's better to um, take in, go to a few places and really take it in than to go to, hundreds of places and not really have a distinct memory of each one because
I
what
love
happens
that.
like when you're just a tourist is you're
Mhm.
experiencing the same thing. Every most countries they have a mall. You'll see an H&M there. You'll see a McDonald's, a bigger like the tourist experience is very identical to many different countries. And once you kind of like understand like what works for you, you can kind of avoid that. So yeah, a lot of times like I mean, I don't remember last time I had McDonald's.
I'm trying to think. There was something I was gonna say to what you said. I love, love, love how you highlighted not going to a lot of different countries just to get a little because it's people who are like, yeah, I've been to 80 countries. And I'm like, so how many places? And how long did you stay?
Yeah,
Oh, well, I just stayed like 2 to 3 days, maybe 5 days. And it's good to be able to say you've traveled there, but did you really submerge into the culture and the energy of that country to even see if you really even like it? Did you really get a real experience? Because
yeah,
I personally feel like you cannot get a real experience being in a place for a short period of time. That is why I choose to stay in a country a year tops, every country. That's just me. Plus, I have
yeah,
children. So I feel like I have to be grounded in some kind of way, right? But I get
yeah,
people
yeah.
who are backpackers and they want to do like 3 months, 6 months. That's cool. But a week, 3 days, four
No,
days, and you've been to 80 countries, I get it. So I love that you highlighted that. I love that you
yeah,
highlighted.
because it's a bit different sometimes when you have like a base. Like for me, when I was living in Vienna, for example, especially if you're in a place like Europe, I think Europe is very unique in that way where if you have a base somewhere, you can take a weekend trip, right? A lot of times the flights aren't too bad. You can take a weekend trip and go to like Italy for a weekend and experience
Mhm.
that and kind of come back. So those are kind of a bit, I'd say, a different experience. And then it's so diverse in terms of like the languages, right? It's like there's a point where within an hour you can be speaking like German or Polish or Czech, right? Like with so the countries are so I think different and diverse in that sense where you could experience things in a way it doesn't feel overly saturated because they're just kind of nearby. But that's
Mhm.
different than like hopping from like Canada to Spain to I don't know, Singapore, where you're doing these big leaps, and then because you get exhausted, like the first day you're recovering from the trip, and then
I'm traveling.
so yeah,
Okay, so do you feel as though you having that experience in Germany so young has a big impact on you in Europe? Because I feel like you like Europe a lot. You speak about it a lot. You say a lot of intriguing things about it. Like I can tell that Europe is more your vibe. So do you
yeah.
feel as though Germany had an impact in that? Do you feel like that experience with you being younger and being in Germany had that effect?
Yeah, I don't. I feel like my life would have been a lot different if I wasn't kind of exposed to being in Germany at an early age. I just
Hmm.
think that, and then knowing, friends from the U.S., how hardened they are by, you know, the American culture, where for them it's just like it's just not a possible shift. There's no view of it because they kind of got stuck in that rat race. There's this thing called like golden handcuffs, right? Where it's like you're in a job, you're in a house, the car that you're paying off, and like leaving that requires to accept being like starting over, right? And losing all of that
Yes.
kind of like actual equity, social equity. Like it's like
Mhm.
everything you've been thought was wrong if you all of a sudden feel like, oh, this is not for me, right? It's like all that investment that you made into being there, you know, was wrong, and which is not really, but it's just like you have to have the ability to like change your mind and like want different things. And some people are kind of just still stuck in that because their whole social circle, and that's the thing sometimes about the US, is like our social circles are defined by kind of like what we do. um it's like because
That's
it kind
true.
of determines like how you kind of hang out with people, and whether your friends are all traveling business class somewhere, or you guys are all like taking a bus. Like these things just kind of is very segmented like that. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's kind of weird to think like it would be a completely different life without that exposure. Because for me, it was just like, oh, it doesn't matter. Living in the U.S., working there, having a good job, having great colleagues, and just being able to like, this is nice, but it's just like, um, where does this go? I remember I had a colleague who, when I was like, taking all this unpaid leave and, kind of traveling, and he was like, it's really good that you're doing this. And I think this was the thing that really gave me a push. He said that I remember when I first started here, and he was like 10 years. I think I was working at this company for about 3 years already, and he was there for like 10 years. So he was a bit older than me. And then he was like, yeah, I came here. I also wanted to do that. And then I don't know, 10 years just went by. And then I saw that I was like, wow, yeah, time if you're not careful, it does just fly by, right? And yeah, so that kind of gave me a push. I'm like, okay, so what kind of, yeah, regret do I want? Because you have
It
to choose.
does. Yeah, you definitely have to choose. So, what advice would you give to someone that's in that moment right now? And they're in that moment where they're in the States, they're thinking, like, I want to leave, but I don't want to lose the American dream, right? Because that's what we're
Yeah,
taught. Buy a home, go to college, pay off your car, get a career, and just live basic. What
yeah,
advice would you give to that person if they're like, hey, I think I want to travel. I think I do want to move abroad. What would you say? Like, because there's so much confusion that goes on. You got your friends and your family that's like, nowhere else is better than here, right?
yeah.
Challenging you. And then you got society norms promoting
Hmm.
fear. Well, what's the infrastructure like in this country? Everybody, what's so crazy about Americans, they really think that the infrastructure is only solid in America.
Yeah.
They think nowhere else has government, nowhere else has houses, nowhere else, like it's crazy. So what advice would you give to that person?
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of interesting too, because in even in Europe, for example, if you compare Europe to like Asia, places like Thailand, where like in Singapore, the things just work. Escalators are always working. I remember I was in Amsterdam a couple months ago, and the escalators like rarely work. So even like within different regions, like when you people always expect like even like, oh, Europe is supposed to be everything's supposed to work. This is like first world states, and then you go to some of these countries that are deemed like not a first world country, and things just
Mhm.
work and have some level of efficiencies. But yeah, so back to your first question, I would say that I had some regrets in the sense that I was a bit spontaneous. So for me, I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna go and figure it out. I think that one advice would definitely be to do a lot of planning. Maybe not too much planning. Sometimes too much planning is bad, but I think one regret I have is I definitely didn't plan it out because it was just kind of like I let it get to a point of like burnout where I'm like I'm just gonna do it. But I think early on when you start to get that, like to just kind of start planning because I've seen met a lot of people who went through that journey living abroad, and I've seen like the different structures where like and people who are just like at peace, right? They got their house and like they're subleasing it. They set up their investments. They made it in a way where they can just be out abroad if they don't do anything. Like they, there's no pressure. Whereas like for me, I had like a lot of pressure. I'm like, okay, I'm here now. Need to find work. Need to do this, and there, that pressure kind of like dilutes the experience a bit.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think the number one thing is just to like financially plan it out. At least give yourself like a year at least of being like, if I go and if I don't do anything for a year, am I fine? And then I think that piece just allows you to like really take the time to learn, what you want to do and like which direction you want to get to. Um, and then also like really not going places because you're hearing that you should. That's something as well.
Mhm.
Like it's very common. Like everyone's like, oh, go to Lisbon, go to Spain, go to and it's just like they just tag along. And I think you really have to understand like what exactly do you want for yourself, right? Like if you're not really big in like big cities, like don't go to a big city. There are other there's many cities outside the US. You can find one that kind of fits your vibe. You know, if you don't want to have to worry about driving, like a place like Vienna where it's like great public transportation. So like I think identifying these things too. Another thing is also like for me, one of the reasons why I will spend a lot of time in Europe is because the time zone is a lot easier. It's only 6 hours from at least where I'm at from the US. So by the time it's like 3 p.m. here, that's when official kind of work hours start in the US. And then like I have really, I'll say, relaxing mornings, going to the gym, and not having to like kind of stress. So like factoring these things out versus just saying like everyone's like, oh, just move to Thailand, and then you'll go there and then you have to like figure these things out
Oh,
there and
yes,
then yeah, so
it's the
it
worst.
makes it a bit more complicated. So I would say definitely a bit of planning in terms of like just financially and just one being in a city that you like, because like we said earlier, it's better to really just go somewhere and just take your time and get everything a city has to offer.
Definitely everything that the city has to offer. So, as far as currently, you are currently in.
So right now I'm currently in Vienna. So right now I'm living in Spain, but I'm in Vienna right now visiting friends.
Okay. So, what made you choose Spain?
So for Spain, because before I was doing like a lot of visa runs, so I'll be in Europe, I'll go to Asia and come back like 90 days here and there. And then Spain has like a digital nomad visa. So I was looking at a
Mhm.
few countries, Lisbon, or sorry, Portugal, for Lisbon. I've been there and yeah, it's really nice. I would say Spain. I've been there as well. So their visas seem kind of more attractive. There's some other countries, Hungary. Yeah, more and more countries are coming out with like their digital nomad visa. So yeah, Spain just because like now in Europe it's getting cold. So that warm weather, I would say I'm starting to appreciate that a bit more.
So, you actually missed the warm weather?
Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of strange. I've never really been this is the thing when I was in the US, I'd never really been into like, going to the beach and like I didn't really care so much about like the warmth, what the weather's the seasons changed and I just kind of adapted. And then after living in Bali for some time, just seeing how much happier I was when I was, by the water. And I was like, okay, this is good. So yeah, I was kind of looking for something similar.
I think that's very important too. That people don't think about weather. And this is something I promoted that I talk a lot about with people
Mhm.
because it affects your mood. It does. It
Yeah,
really
yeah,
really
yeah.
does. So, if you go somewhere where it's tropical and it rains all the time, then you got to learn to maneuver. Because like here in Thailand, we maneuver through the rain. The rain don't stop nothing.
Yeah,
I got on a dress and some heels, and I'm on my way out. If it starts raining, we're still going. I'm not gonna turn around because it's raining, because you kind of adapt to the way of life where it's rainy season. We still have to move around. We're still gonna be out and about. And then you have dry season, and then, all of these different seasons. So I always tell people it's very important to figure out where you want to go, because like I'm from the
hmm
Midwest. So I'm used to snow. Like back home right now, it's snowing in
yeah,
Detroit. In Michigan, it's snowing. And I'm like, I don't really want to return to that, because once you get a taste of tropical, you kind of want to like stay in tropical. So
yeah.
whenever you're deciding on like where you want to live, what's your two main factors that you always put your focus on when you're trying to decide?
Yeah, I would say walkability is probably the main one for me now. It's really hard to kind of
Mm.
go back because at least in Virginia, I was driving everywhere. You don't really get around without a car, and then if you have to use public transportation, it's just going to take forever. So, and I don't want to have to go through the process of getting, like a car abroad, because that limits my mobility. Because if I just feel like, leaving, I have to get rid of a car. Yeah, walkability, because I just want to be able to get places, efficiently. I'll say weather does kind of play a role, but that one is kind of like just so foundational. Like I used to stay in like Helsinki in Finland, for example, and like that's like the extreme. If
Oh,
if you're talking
fancy.
about tropical and like
Mhm.
Southeast Asia, that's like the extreme where you have these like beautiful summers, daylight all day, is warm for like 2 or 3 months, and then it's just like downhill. Winters are, you get the opposite of that, darkness, most of the time, and cold. And that's just like,
Mhm.
so I don't even consider that going there and living somewhere like that, during the
Mhm.
winter. So yeah, aside from walkability, for me is also just like overall cost of living. One reason I really love Vienna is like you can get, an apartment for like 600 $700 or something, like a good centrally located apartment per month with like utilities included.
Wow,
Yeah, because
600, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
yeah, it's which is like so um odd, because compared to like the rest of the region, and I think I found out one of the reasons is because the government owns like 60% of the buildings, so they can kind of control uh the prices. And then they they have a limit on like Airbnb, so you can't rent out an Airbnb for more than like 3 months. So they really have control of like the housing, which makes it so you don't have like this high influx of like investments into property and empty, apartments, just for the sake of like, putting it on
Mhm.
Airbnb. But yeah, so walkability, because that factors into everything else. Like I just want to be near like, a coffee shop that I can go and work from, or I want to be near the gym, because if I don't work out, then I'm not productive. Um, but yeah, so walkability and prices for sure.
Okay, okay. I love that. I hear so much good things about Spain. I've had a few different people on the podcast that are in Spain, and I just always hear good things about Spain. I hear that it's very universal, that it's very diverse, that it's people from
Yeah.
all over. And I always hear about that digital nomad visa. A lot of people are saying that it's very convenient, it's friendly, and they like the process, and that it's not as hard as it is in other places. And I'm just like, oh wow, okay, I like that. I like the fact that they make the transition actually easier, because a lot of
Mhm.
countries don't make that easy, especially,
Yeah.
being a digital nomad and being a traveler and living in different countries. Okay, so let's go into community. What does community look like living abroad for you? Is it easy to meet up with like-minded souls? Do you have your own group of people that you connect with being a black man in Spain? You know,
Yeah.
how was your
Yeah.
journey?
It really varies, like especially country to country. That's something where you really start to, I would say, I didn't care about it more earlier on, because I just kind of relied on, like, I would say, digital maintaining like my friendships like online, calling friends and just you're
Hmm.
sending memes to each other. And then after going to Bali and just seeing like just the benefit of like in a place like that, for example, it's more expensive to like cook at home than to just eat out.
Hmm.
So a lot of times everyone's usually like going out for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then so when you make friends, like you're just, hey, let's grab lunch, let's grab dinner. So you're always like interacting with your friends in person. And then I was like, okay, I feel kind of happier having kind of physical community. So now that's something I kind of factor in.
Hmm.
But yeah, in places like Spain, I would say for me, one of the things I have done is so I do stand up comedy on the side. So that's been one way of like kind of
Okay,
getting
that's
exposure to
cool.
people. And also like the gym, I'll meet people there. And then run clubs. So I've been joining run clubs, and that's been like a really kind of easy way of like really connecting with people because they're on that same kind of mindset. That they care about being healthy and being active.
Hmm.
So that's been I would say three main ways I've kind of made friends abroad. And yeah, I think just being American, like if someone's there, I'm gonna talk to them. So
Yeah, I
I'm like
love
the American of the group, kind
it.
of bringing different people together. But yeah, that's definitely something that I think I value. Like for example, I used to live in Poland, like in just kind of a random city. It was called Poznan, and like back then I didn't really kind of care so much. So it was like, okay, I'm just gonna be in this country. I have this apartment is quite cheap, and I'll travel here and there. And it's like, um, then I kind of come to the conclusion like I really need to have, I'll say, a sense of community. Like I need to be somewhere where it's easier to kind of build that because um yeah, it doesn't matter kind of who you are, like eventually there's a reason why solitary confinement is a punishment. Like you can be the most introverted person, but like you still need to kind of interact with people. So I definitely like to go to places where it's there's more opportunities to interact with different people.
Yes, connection is very important. I think that because I'm
Yeah.
like a loner at heart, I love my own company. Even having kids, my kids even know, hey, I'm going in my room to just be to myself. I love my own energy, but I love connection. And I feel that it's important. And I actually have learned even more being abroad how important community is. It's very important,
Yeah.
especially when you're navigating these new experiences and you're foreign to it, right? So sometimes
Hmm.
a person from that country, they won't be able to relate because they're native to the country, right? Or maybe someone else that's from another country, they might not be able to relate to a situation you're having because they're not American or they don't speak English. So it's very good to have some type of community that's diverse too, where you can have people from
Yeah.
different places and be able to connect on deeper levels. I feel like that's so important. That's something that I learned that's actually really important because I used to be the one like, well, I'm not worried. Everybody got my
Yeah, yeah,
number.
yeah.
I need to be in touch. And then when Boots was on the ground, it was like, oh no, I need some community. I have to have somebody I can just go get a drink with, coffee with, a dinner with, just hang out. Like that's important. As humans, we need that
Hmm.
for mental
Yeah.
support.
And
So,
that's like I would say a theme or something it took me a while to realize. I probably realized this like maybe 2 years ago when I was in Bali. It's like when you think about when you're back in the US and you think about community, you have people that you were just you connected with based on proximity, whether it's you kind of went to school with them or work with them or friends of friends. And I think the difference, because I was trying to understand like why does it feel like when I'm in these kind of heavy nomadic hot zones, whether it's like Lisbon, Bali, somewhere in Thailand, why does it feel like connections are stronger, quicker,
mm,
right? Versus like, you knew someone from high school for 10 years, you guys hung out, but like, you meet someone in Bali and you're hanging out for like a month and it feels like a strong connection. And it's like I come to
wow, yeah.
conclusion. It's like it takes a certain amount of like I won't say craziness, but like courage to like leave your country, right, and go to another place and just kind of figure it out, right? These are generally somewhat outgoing and just brave people and people who are like willing to be open-minded and expose to themselves to them, right? So like a lot of times when you do meet people abroad, it's people with that similar kind of mindset.
Mhm.
So it's easier to just kind of connect versus if you're just meeting someone back home and, you know, they may not be the person to pack their bags and move to Thailand, right? But when you meet someone who did that in Thailand too, it's easier to connect because then it's like, okay, like yeah, they'll be willing to like, let's take a 3 day trip to Cambodia or something, or let's go to Chiang Mai. Let's just do all these things. Like they're more likely to do that with you, so it's easier, I think, to connect because the mindset is a lot similar.
Wow, I love that perspective. That's deep. I love that. I love that. And I can agree. I feel like cuz I met a lady who lives here in Chiang Mai where I am, and she's a lot
Hmm.
older than me, which typically I don't have older friends for the most part. All I've
Yeah.
been attracting older people. And like when I say we will be on the phone for hours or hanging out, getting together, I feel like I've known this lady forever. She's like family. It's actually two of them. And it's so crazy because I'm like, was I sent here specifically to meet and connect with these kind of people? Because your connections become, like you said, birds of a feather flock together, right? So you become
Hmm.
what you vibrate around and what you're connected to. You start adopting some of their ideologies, the way that they move, the way that they think. You start kind of picking those things up. So I definitely agree with that. And I feel like it's important to have it. So if anybody's watching, make sure you have some community abroad. Because like when I had my
Yeah,
issues
yeah,
with
for sure.
immigration, I was so upset with immigration. I was ready to go. It was my friend that talked me out of that. She was like, hold on, girl, take a deep breath. In that moment, I needed that. I couldn't call my parents or friends back home. No one will be able to relate to what I was going through, right? So to have her here
Hmm.
in this environment on this land with me and to be able to help me slow it down and come back because I was so upset. Like, I'm leaving Thailand. I'm over this. And she's like, no, take a deep breath. And I told her, like, that day she helped me more than she realized. And that's the day I realized that community is very important. So
Hmm.
I agree with
Yeah,
everything
and
you
I
said
think
about that.
she probably solved it in a way. I think when you have this like similar mindset, um, what ends up happening is like because they got experience, they experience something that you haven't experienced, and you experience something that she hasn't experienced. It's like when you come across a problem that they they encountered, they're solving it probably in the way that you would have solved it, right? Because you're kind of so similar, right? So it's like it just feels more natural and comforting. You're like, okay, actually that makes sense. Like that's probably what I would have done if I had to go through it. So yeah, it's really nice when you meet these people
It is. It's
because
definitely
their
really
solution
nice.
wouldn't be like, oh, you know what? Let me just go back home, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's not your solution. That wouldn't be theirs. And
Right.
yeah, those people who would have a completely different problem solving method is they're not the ones you're meeting.
Exactly. Not the ones at all. And you know, if you would have called somebody back home, they would have been like, girl, because my family, they still think I'm nuts for even choosing Thailand. They would be like, girl,
Hmm.
you better come back. I wouldn't even be, you know what I'm saying? So it's very important to
Yeah.
make sure you're connected to people that actually helps you grow, that's helping you grow and helping you transform. So I love that. Okay. So as far as working and making money abroad, now this is the biggest one. You know, this is all a lot of people really care
Yeah.
about when it comes to questions. I get a lot of these questions all the time. People are like, what will I do to make money? How am I going to keep making money? So could you share with us what it is that you do to maintain financially abroad and what tips that you can share for others to do the same?
Yeah, so for me, for most of the time, I would always like work for a US company.
Hmm.
Um, and so remotely, of course. And that has been like the main thing. I would kind of get into kind of other things here and there, but like in terms of like actually sustaining myself abroad, that's like the main thing. And I feel like there you have to be a bit open-minded because there are, I would say, jobs where you'll see a certain salary in the US and you're thinking like, okay, I can't take this, but when your cost of living gets to like one third abroad, what you end up having is like you end up making more in a sense, right? I remember the first time I was like out. I had a friend. He was working in Silicon Valley, probably making like double, and I feel like I was taking home more because my cost of living was way less, right? Like, I'm eating $3 pad thai, right? He's spending $30 on like acai bowls, so it's like, it's different. So I would say definitely be open minded to like salary wise and look at the cost of living and where you want to go, because what you end up seeing is like you can make less in terms of US dollars, but then you would also save more because your cost is a lot less. Uh, so yeah, that's like I would say the main thing. Um, don't be so fixed on like US salary based on you living in the US, unless if you're not gonna live there.
Right. Yeah, because it's much more, depending on what you make, you'll definitely be able to not just get by, but actually live and then have some change to go places and actually explore and, live. Okay, so what would you say would be the
Yeah.
best way to go about finding these jobs? Do you have any websites or anything you can share or any information you can share on the best way to go about finding these positions?
Yeah, so for me, most of mine have come from like just networking.
Mhm.
I don't know, like traditional job boards have never really worked for me, like LinkedIn and all these things. Like,
Really?
that's the
Wow.
thing. Yeah, I don't know. So I've always relied on like kind of networking and like just really going after like small companies. Um, and I think with smaller companies, you can have more flexibility,
Mhm.
because you can have more impact versus, yeah, a larger company, you're kind of a number, so you're more susceptible and I think more vulnerable to just like, layoffs and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, when you have like a smaller company, as long as, they can see you delivering value, then that's kind of different. And I see people do a lot of different things, especially like if you go to Bali, people are like doing their coaching and yeah, so for me, that's something I'm trying to be kind of better with, but it's really like I think finding kind of smaller companies in the US, that you can kind of work remote from, and definitely being flexible salary wise, because like I said, you could save, you can end up saving more. Like when I was in Bali, I think I was spending, my apartment was like $600 with cleaning. I would have cleaning a few times a week. I had a pool, um, and I never did laundry because laundry was like $2, pretty much a week, $2 or $3 a week. Um, so yeah, it's like having that in the US was just not, you have to make a lot.
Yeah, you definitely do. Okay, so what do you feel about this theory? Do you feel like eventually working remote, it'll eventually take you into entrepreneurship and having a business, or is that not of interest to you?
No, no, for sure. These are some of the things that I'm kind of working on the side right now. So I definitely think, because you're kind of doing most of that anyway. You're by yourself. You're um, kind of work independently. You're not in an office full of people. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, but if it's not an easy journey, right? You have to kind of fail a lot until you kind of figure out what works. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's the direction I'm trying to kind of get to.
yeah, that's so true. I always tell people that my theory and from my experience, my knowledge, and just, speaking with all different kinds of people and also my personal experience, I feel as though living and traveling abroad eventually pushes you into entrepreneurship. You start to
Yeah.
monetize your life is what I call it. Monetizing your life, you become the brand, you become the product,
Hmm.
and it's kind of not like you're selling yourself, but pretty much sharing your experience. And people are buying the brand of you because they're interested in you, your travels, your experiences, your insight, and the knowledge that you have to share based on what you've learned over time. So I always like to
Yeah.
ask that question because it's pretty interesting. I just want people that's watching and everyone to be aware that, most people don't do remote work forever. And a lot of
No,
people
no.
come to me and they're like, so yeah, do I just like do that? And I'm like, no, it's levels, it's chapters. You kind of you go up the ladder, like you said. You fail a lot of times, and not, well, I don't really call it failing, but I guess you could say failing. But you kind of, you have to break through all these different challenges to figure out what really works for you. And then it's like once you unlock the code and create that remedy on how you can monetize your life, and you can create this and say, hey, I can make money from this. Hey, I can make money from this. Just being you, just showing up as you. And then that's when, everything comes full circle. But I always like to ask that question for that reason, because I just want to know your insight and if you were actually going to just, stick to remote work, or if you were opening, taking other avenues eventually to go a new route, right? So I
Yeah,
love that you're open
and
to
it
that.
comes back to what I said before about like making sure there's some financial stability when you go, so that you can peacefully test out different things, or
Yes.
else you're running, highly stressed trying to figure it out in the moment.
Yes. And that's important. And that's why I say, like, working period in general has its benefits. That's why I tell people I'm not telling
Mm,
anybody to just leave your job. I'm telling you use your job
no,
as a
no,
stepping stool. Build, save, invest, and then work your way up. And that's the same thing if you work a remote job. For anyone that's watching, it goes the same way. You have to work your way up. There's
okay,
levels to this. You can't just jump and say, hey, I'm gonna do this. You need a plan. Okay.
yeah,
So
it's not worth the stress.
yeah, not at all, because it can get stressful. I actually see a lot of travelers in a lot of different groups, and it's no shade, but I want to highlight it. I see a lot of different travelers that end up going broke. And then they come to
Yeah,
the internet and they say, hey, and I show them grace. No judgment from me, but lots of judgment from others. And I show them grace because I get it. Sometimes when you feel like
hmm,
you're in that moment where you want to be brave and you want to try something different, you'll jump out there. But it's not anything that I recommend. I do not recommend it because it's not
no,
safe. And that's where it'll get you. You'll go broke in a country and you'll be stuck, or either you'll be in a situation where you'll be deported, and you will really, really set yourself up
ooh,
for like the worst experience. And I see it all the time.
yeah.
So I love that you highlighted that too. You're like, yeah, gotta have that stability. So yeah, if you gotta do some remote work to have something to lay down your foundation to work towards something greater, you gotta crawl before you walk. Okay, so the
Yeah,
next question that I
absolutely.
want to ask you is, how do you cater to health insurance and anything that has to do with your health? Because a lot of people feel like they have to buy insurance. And then it's some people like me, I don't have any insurance that I'm paying for. I pay for my services out of pocket. And then I have 3 kids. So it's better to just do it like that for me, because it's a lot of us. Instead of paying for insurance, when I could just pay for a doctor visit because it's cheaper here. The healthcare is cheaper here. Everything is cheaper here. We went to the dentist for $70. Everyone got a cleaning for seventy
Yeah.
dollars. So that's not normal. So what's your route that you take as far as for insurance? Do you have any? Do you not like insurance? What's your take on that?
So I've mostly kind of done the way you've done it. So just out of pocket, just it's like the cost. I remember in the U.S. a cleaning would be like 600, and then like 50 for the visit. Here I would go for like in Croatia usually like 25, 30 euros just to do my cleaning.
Mm.
Most things I paid out of pocket. Sometimes I'm like I'm I think they made a mistake because the cost is just like so low compared to the US for things. And then I would do insurance just like visa requirements. At least like the digital nomad in Spain, for example, the visa, like you need insurance for that. So those are the times I would do it. But most of the time, whatever I need, I just kind of go and just pay out of pocket because it's compared to the US at least, like what you would pay just for like the visit before you get your insurance billed and uh yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is a lot. It's
How
like
cheap.
when you see the prices, you're like, oh my God. Like when I told all my family and friends, oh, we only spent 70, they were like, wow. And that's why I'm like, yeah, it's best to just pay out of pocket. And a lot of people that I know that live abroad, they actually do that. Even if it's like a big deal, major
Yeah,
doctor visits, they just pay out of pocket because it's cheaper. And then I also did hear what you said about the insurance for the visa. I was
yeah,
told that you did have to have their insurance for the digital nomad visa. So for anybody that's watching and might be interested in the digital nomad visa in Spain, you do have to have some type of health insurance to apply for that.
yeah. like like I would have it just for, and then my card would have like when you're traveling, there's like coverage, so it's like I have it for like anything major, but for like some of
Mhm.
the small ones, so I wouldn't get like supplemental dental and supplemental this just because I'd rather just pay out of pocket for all these things. But it's like, so it's nice to have like the main one. Like in Spain, it's like €60 a month for the insurance that I have. So it's like anything major happened, and like that's kind of covered. But outside of that, like, what if I'm going to a dermatologist, dentist, stuff like that, I just kind of pay out of pocket, and usually it's not too much, at
Yeah,
least compared
it's
to
not
the
too
US. I
much.
mean,
Right, right. A lot cheaper. Anything that's cheaper. Okay,
yeah,
so um, I want to know, and I would like you to share culture shocks. I just want to go into that. Can you name like maybe one or two
yeah, it's
culture shocks
interesting.
you've
Yeah.
had and how you've overcame them?
Yeah, so I actually I started posting kind of like doing a daily post. So I have like videos of like culture shocks in different places. So I would say one culture shock that was kind of popular that I posted about is sometimes when you're in a region, there's like we're kind of used to our U.S. conflict. You kind of know, you know, when you're in the U.S., you kind of you're familiar with how to move there. Whereas like you can be in another country and you're not aware of like their own internal things. So, for example, in like Croatia, so during like the fall of Yugoslavia, you had like this really nasty war between Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia, like um, Slovenia, and like between Croatia and like Serbia was really bad. Where if you're like in Croatia, you shouldn't really talk about how much you love Serbia, and then vice versa when you're in Serbia, because like there's still like people who like had to go to war and like kill each other. So that was like one culture shock that I realized, like, you have to really kind of be mindful of like the wars that happened back back in the day. And so that's something that, yeah, I kind of picked up on. And another one is like, especially in Spain, like how slow I'll say life is. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but like, for example, a lot of places won't open for dinner until like 8 p.m. And in the US, like that's after dinner. That's like, dinner's already gone,
Right.
right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like sometimes life moves a bit slower in other places as well. So that's kind of interesting.
That's very interesting. Wow. Okay. 8 p.m.,
Yeah, no, no,
not
seriously, I had
6
to
p.m.,
wait.
at
I wanted to
least
get ramen.
6.
Some places, of course, I think probably most places it's like 6 or so, but like some places will be 7 or 8 p.m. Um, and sometimes they'll just shut down. So in Spain, they have this thing called like siesta, where they kind of take
Yes,
a
I've
break in the
heard
middle
it.
of the day. So a lot of times, things are just closed. You go to a coffee shop, 2 p.m. and it's not open.
I've heard about that. I've heard that Europe is slow when it comes to that. And for anybody that's looking for slow living, there you go. That'll work for you perfectly.
Yeah.
Is there anything about your experience that you would like to share with our audience that you feel they should know, or that you would just like to share in general about traveling and living abroad?
Yeah, I think just highlighting some of the things I mentioned earlier where like you really want to make sure you're experiencing what you internally want to and not just like what you're seeing on Instagram, because that's very far from like reality, right? Everyone's just showing you highlights. You have people, they'll go places and then uh they kind of get burned out. So definitely if you want to experience something that's sustainable, really kind of go after, I'd say, if you're really into nature, like, go to Chiang Mai, like don't go to Bangkok. Like
Right.
really um go to the places that I think feel align with like your values and like your soul.
Let's align with your values and your soul. I love that. I love that so much. Do you have any links or anything that you can share with us on how to find you? Do you have like TikTok,
Yeah.
Facebook, Instagram, anything? Could you share that with us so they'll know where to find you? And I'm also going to tag it in the description
Yeah,
for
yeah.
anyone that's interested in following.
Yeah, yeah. So my socials are usually just like at Travel Pour. So on YouTube, on Instagram. And then so I think we'll add the links into the bio and the description of the video. So yeah, I make videos every day, wherever I'm at, about different culture shocks, and just things I'm experiencing. So uh follow along for the journey.
Yes, definitely follow along. So the last thing that I want to cover before ending is what type of mindset does a person, because you know everything that I do and that I promote is the subconscious mind, the neuroscience, and the psychology behind this lifestyle identity shifting. So I would love for you to share with us what type of mindset do you maintain and what a person have to maintain in order to stay on this journey and to start this journey.
You definitely have to be open-minded and be just give people, I think, the benefit of the doubt. I think traveling, especially being black, like for me, I have a very high bar for like racism. Something has to be super obvious. So when people are looking at me or something weird, I just don't mind. I'm like, okay, whatever. Maybe they're having a bad day, something's different. I just don't see that until it's like super obvious. So, and I think that's just more for my internal peace. So you have to be kind of like very forgiving and like just give people the benefit of the doubt, until it's like proven wrong, and just being kind of open minded in terms of like, experiencing and exposing yourself to things. I think without that, you're just gonna not have a great experience.
Yes, I love that. I love that, especially for the stairs. Expect, because we're,
Yeah.
obviously if you're black or melanated or whatever and you're going to places, people are gonna stare, right? So like you said, not taking it
Hmm.
personal and having that inner peace. So that inner peace is so important. I
Yep.
appreciate that. Thank you so much for taking the time out to share your experience and your
No
journey with
worries.
us. Truly, truly appreciate it. It was very
Yeah, I
informative, very
appreciate you guys.
interesting. Yes. So I
Yeah, thank
appreciate
you very much.
everyone. I'm sorry, what you say?
No, I said thank you very much for hosting me.
Oh yes, my pleasure, my pleasure. I hope that it wasn't lagging because I think it was like lagging for a minute. It always does that at the end, but I'm happy that we got to complete successfully. So thank you so much for taking the time to share this moment with us.
Thank
And
you.
thank you to everyone that tuned in today. We appreciate it. Please make sure you like, subscribe, share, comment. I'll have all of his information in the description so that you can follow it over to his page to keep watching his journey. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.
Awesome. Have a good one.
Hey, you're in